Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. And I rise today to speak against the ongoing negotiations in Havana between the government of Colombia and the terrorist group known as the FARC. This draft agreement contains alarming provisions that could empower the ringleaders of the world's largest cocaine cartel and undermine America's security interest in the region. It would also make American taxpayers foot the bill through their tax dollars in support of this bad agreement that effectively whitewashes human rights abuses, while the administration of President Obama seeks more than $70 million to this proposal. This agreement diminishes the FARC's responsibility for its role in drug trafficking, as well as the thousands of murders and kidnappings and other innumerable crimes that the FARC has perpetrated against the Colombian people by allowing the soldiers and the leaders of the FARC to avoid any jail time for all of those crimes. To make matters worse, this agreement creates an equivalency between the FARC and innocent civilians, categorizing both as actors in the conflict when it has been civilians who have been the victims of the FARC's narco-terror and the FARC's brutality. As if that were not awful enough, Mr. Speaker, to equate innocent victims with the FARC in the courts of law, the draft agreement goes even further by allowing those very same violent drug dealers and insurgent leaders to not only stand for election for public office, but also to be able to use the proceeds of the drug trade, of the kidnappings, and all of the other illicit sources to fund their campaigns. This is incredible. But the flaws in this deal don't end there, Mr. Speaker. This agreement will prevent the United States from extraditing any FARC members who have been accused of crimes against American citizens. This is especially troubling when we consider that many of the FARC members may receive immunity. It would not surprise me if the Obama administration uses this deal as an excuse to drop the FARC from our list that designates the FARC as a foreign terrorist organization. The Obama administration has never met a bad deal that it did not want to say yes to, especially if the deal empowers tyrants or acquiesces to terrorist demands, and this puts our credibility and puts our national security at risk. But what is really driving these requests is the administration of Obama and their continued quest to appease the Castro regime. This is the same Castro regime whose weapons systems from China to Cuba was intercepted by the Colombian government just last March, and which were suspected of being intended for the FARC. While negotiations were taking place, they were doing these illicit arms shipments. Incredible. It's the same Castro regime that for decades has supported the FARC, and they have trained many of its leaders in the terror camps. Mr. Speaker, Cuba has no interest in a peaceful resolution to the conflict in Colombia. The Castro regime is only interested in leveraging a strengthened and legitimized FARC as a dominant player in Colombia. The proposed deal, as well as those requests by Colombia of the U.S. government, are not only dangerous to our Colombian partners, but they are also dangerous to our national security and to our interest in the region. I urge my fellow members of Congress to speak out against this terrorist group, the FARC, as well as to block any attempts by our administration to go soft in these negotiations, because this weak position could threaten our safety and block American citizens from receiving their rightful justice. And I urge my colleagues to block attempts by the Obama administration to use U.S. taxpayer dollars for this agreement between the Colombian government and the FARC. A reinforced FARC with established political legitimacy sets a dangerous precedent for other organizations with similar dangerous aspirations and anti-American objectives in the region. Let's not force our constituents to pay for this flawed and dangerous deal with terrorists. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield.